Welcome back to another episode of the Silver Spoon Podcast. I'm your host, Kennedy Alsop, and we are joined today by Rashaka Caldwell. He is a former coworker turned friend, and I'm excited to have him here today because he's an independent financial advisor. He's also the co-founder of the Stop Playing podcast with Sham and Shaka, where they give their take on current events. I'm really excited because today we're going to be talking a little bit about generational trauma and how it shows up in our finances. And I know that Shaka is going to be a really great just conversationalist around this topic.
No pressure.
So yeah, all right, no pressure at all. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. And I'm a fan. I'm a fan first. What do they say when you call on the radio? Long time listener, first time caller. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so proud of what you've done. I felt the energy when we worked together, and to be here today is awesome. So thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. Well, let's dive into it. So we've got a couple of things that we're going to talk about today around how generational trauma shows up in our finances. So we're specifically going to be talking about the Black community.
Yeah.
This episode is going to drop on June 18th. So that is the day before Juneteenth, naturally. So of course we're going to shout out our group. Got my shirt, Defending Black Womanhood. We're ready for it today.
I'm wearing my name, and that in and of itself stands in the Black community.
Yes, I love it. So, of course, there's no secret that the history of the United States and many other places is laced with the, of course, oppression, disenfranchisement of Black and Brown communities. Of course, there's a lot of history, a lot of context that we can look into that kind of helps us unpack how we may act and think about money and our finances today. So sort of starting, I didn't mention this, but we were former co-workers but we were former co-workers at a financial advising firm. And so we have a lot of personal experience of just working with people in our community, sort of help them with financial planning. And firsthand experience, we know how hard that can be. Black folks definitely do not like to talk about their money. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts around the history that we have with the lack of trust in financial institutions and how that may be showing up in the way that we talk about money, seek out advice about money today?
Well, yeah, no, it's a great question. So when we talk about like institutions, we can start with the sense that institutions, they can be untrustworthy. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that it's important for us to realize is that Black people's lack of trust in financial institutions is not irrational. Mm-hmm. Now, what can cause us harm is that we can't singularly think it's just about us in that sense. They're just, they're run by human beings. Mm-hmm. And as we saw in 2008 is the biggest case recently, right. But it's cyclical. Right. It always happens. Right. When human beings get, too much free reign to run financial institutions, they do bad things. Now, that being said, my parents and probably more so my grandparents' generation, they were of the belief of saving, and then I had great aunts and uncles who did not put their money in banks, period. One famously put his money literally under the mattress, that kind of thing. But I think in general, our parents' generation did save, believed in insurance, believed in protection, and then those things kind of eroded as more financial vehicles became available. And as you said, Black people don't talk to each other about money, mm-hmm. even in the family. Mm-hmm. And when you don't do that, when you don't educate your son or or your daughter or your children about what you should be doing with money, um, they're just out here, in the world without any kind of guidance because it's not even taught. It's not taught in schools. It is now,
Yeah, right.
a little bit more, but it wasn't then. So you kind of had to figure it out on your own. And when that coalesced with so many different financial vehicles, and you didn't have the kind of protections of pensions and retirements. I mean, you have retirement still, but not pensions and things of that nature that were just solid, concrete, protected vehicles. I think that did a lot of harm to our community because the conversation was already not being had. And then we didn't have those guardrails where we could put money and realize it would be protected for the future.
Right.
It caused us harm. It did. And like I think you used the word stigma. Here's the irony, and I'll turn it back to you because it was a very good question. I kind of ran wild with it. Yeah. Black people like to, or I shouldn't, I'm not going to say Black people like to do this and do that. What I will say is a lot of Black people that I see like to talk about finances as it pertains to things that they can brag about or flex about. Mm-hmm. But they don't like to talk about finances, about things that are foundational and things that can protect us and things that, because they find it boring. It's not flashy, but everyone has financial fear of some sort. Everyone. And once we can admit that, then we can share information and then we can all protect each other. So that's my little opening statement.
No, I think that's very true. And I think it's interesting. It's not only boring, but it's also, I feel like there's like this fear of judgment. I'll even speak from like personal experience. Like I don't want to be seen as failing financially.
Exactly.
So I, might spend a little extra on the credit card to make it seem like I've got everything going on, or, not necessarily ask for help for the things that I need help for, just because I'd rather show you a different picture than what is actually going on. And so, yeah, it's kind of leading into that. Yeah, definitely leading into that, not really feeling open and vulnerable, really more leaning into secrecy.
Yep. But we'll be open about, like, we'll show ourselves on a trip, or we'll show ourselves buying a car or clothes, right? Like, people didn't ask to see that information, but we will show that. I know someone who bought a luxury car, and then when they saw me talk about, like, life insurance and fields we were in and just financial literacy, mutual fund, whatever, they reached out to me on the side, like, I don't know anything about that. But yesterday I saw you post a picture of yourself next to a luxury car. Right? You shared that, but not that question. And there's shame in that question, but there shouldn't be. Just because you don't know it doesn't. The fact that you're asking is awesome, but you feel ashamed to ask about that.
Yeah.
But you want to share. You want to share about your luxury car and your clothes. So that's sort of I think, position that a lot of our people find themselves in.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's certainly true. And I know a little bit of the work that you, of course, being a financial advisor in general.
Worked with some cases. Can't stop it.
But like,
it was awesome.
Yeah, but like being an advisor, a big part of your role is education.
Yes.
And just educating not only our community but any person that you serve in terms of helping them understand exactly what they're doing, what their finances. Honestly, what gaps or hurdles do you see that are maybe more disadvantageous for our community when it comes to education around financial concepts that can be a little bit more complex, especially as like it's not always flashy and fun. It can be very boring. So what are maybe some of the challenges that you see around there, and how could we combat that?
Well, one of the things, I'm going to answer your question by sort of referring to your podcast. One of the things I love about what you do is you link financial sort of health with mental health. And I think especially as we talk about Black people, that is an important link because there are stigmas to both.
Right.
And so then I'll take the answer to its conclusion and say, that's the hurdle. That really is the hurdle. Everything that, we want to improve for Black people, financial health wise, we could take the financial part out of it and say mental health.
Right.
I heard one of your shows where you were talking about like exercise, like physically, and just the routine of it and the mental component of it. That it's the same thing. Right. That's the hurdle. So when we talk about what's boring and what's not, if people associate like saving with not being boring, but being fun. If people, and that sounds corny, but right? Yeah. Like even on his face. But like if you say, okay, well, you know what? Not like, oh, when I get paid, I'm going to put $100. But no, it's like, no, regardless of when I get paid, I'm going to put X amount in this account because I like this high yield savings account. And I like how it goes. And when you create a buzz for yourself out of doing healthy things, to me, it's like exercise. If you're like, hey, okay, well, I got to run a mile today. Well, that kind of sounds sucky, but if it's like, I got to run a mile today while I listen to one of my favorite podcasts, maybe The Silver Spoon, then that doesn't sound as funny or as bad anymore because you're associating it with something positive. Mental health is the key to financial health. And you I'm saying it like I couldn't know. You have honed in on that. And that's the hurdle. There's no secret sauce to, okay, well, saving this mutual or saving this fund or open this account with this place or what have you, or save this amount percentage or what have you. I view financial health as I view like physical health and mental health, especially physical health in the sense that everyone can join the gym or whatever, but you have to have your own personal trainer because everybody's body is different. Everyone's financial situation is different. Everyone's mental makeup is different. And the things that will help you to move in a positive direction, the recipe for you is different from the recipe for me. And when people understand that and not try to compare themselves with everyone else and cause a war in their own head, they'll go a lot further.
Yeah. No, very well said. Very well said. Like one of the principles that I really built this on was the idea that like we can be given all the knowledge in the world, but if we don't have the environment internally to be able to act on that, what really is the point?
Exactly.
Like, we can't do anything, and definitely like I can't. There's not even anything extra I can add. Like that was very.
I mean, I stole some of a lot of
Thank you, but I think that's so true. Like mental health is truly the hurdle and the key, and I think back to like when like we went through like training for what we for being an advisor, and one of the like girls that was in my training class, she just talked about how like I feel like this is therapy. Like we're not asking people numbers, we're asking them like, what's the first thing they learned about, money from their parents, or, how do they feel about certain things? And like, I think people don't realize that, that's.
Well, tell me what you want.
Right.
Like a lot of times it's just that simple. Like, what do you want to do? Yeah. I was talking to someone yesterday and, she said, well, I heard some people talking about how they get income X amount per week and I want to do that. And I said, okay, well, but why do you want to do that? Number one. Number two, it sounds like those people are like, but okay, that's another story. But like, why do you want to do that? And she was like, well, I want to get income. It's like, no. What do you want? Because once you realize what you want, it becomes much easier. Once you identify your target, and I think that a lot of our people, if mental health wise, this is what causes the war in our brain. We're not, you use the word intentionality earlier. We're not intentional enough within ourselves to say, okay, this is what I want for myself. I don't care what my friends say. I don't care what my family says.
Yeah.
I don't care what. Once we get that, then it becomes much easier to say, okay, well, no matter what happens, I'm going to get to this point.
Right.
But if we're just basing our financial, what we perceive as success off of what our family says it should be, or our friends, or what we see from our friends, and it's like, oh, I see them have this car, go on this trip, or what have you. I want that, but no, you don't want that. You just want like sort of the image of what you want to be associated with that imagery, but you don't have a concrete like desire for that.
Right.
Identify what you want, work to get it. Everything becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true, and especially in the age of social media, it's so much harder because you're now overexposed, I would say, to what people are doing. And I mean, we of course never get the full picture.
Yep.
We never really know what's going on in the background, but we see, oh wow, like, you know, they were in Cabo last week and now they're in Australia or I don't know, somewhere. And I'm like, okay, like I wish that I could do that too.
And it's a vicious cycle. I know you're last thing I'll say on that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is mental. Again, I'll circle back.
Yeah.
The mental war.
Yeah.
If you can bring peace to yourself, that's really it. Like after that, everything else falls into place. And our perceptions of what we see, which a lot of times, whether it be online, whether it be friends talking to you, whatever, a lot of it is not true.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not saying that people just run around lying, but what I'm saying is your perception is not reality. And you can plant poison in your head and it causes a war in your head and it causes chaos that prevents you from being focused and doing the things you need to do. And when you bring peace to yourself, then you can achieve the goals you want to do.
Yeah.
Achieve, I should say.
That's this is the perfect time to plug this because just at this time I have like something that will be coming out in August, The Silver Lining, which is going to be a weekly live show that talks more about the personal development side. So how can we bring peace to our mind? So plug, be on the lookout.
I didn't know that.
It was a perfect setup. But okay, that's all. Okay, this has been great so far. So I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, and this sort of might be the last thing we'll sort of touch on in terms of like lack of trust with financial institutions. You mentioned that, like, you know, your parents' generation was all about protecting their money and things like that, and that's something that's certainly deteriorated over time. I feel like not too long ago, there was a big conversation around life insurance. Like, you had people that really believed in it, but then you, of course, had a large group that were very skeptic of life insurance. So just curious if you could dive into that a little bit more, just from your personal experience, what you've seen.
It's a great question. I really think, based on just my conversations around it, it just seems like there wasn't any kind of like cataclysmic event that wiped it off the conversation, but it just gradually like fell out of the conversation and fell off people's radar. And so when I reintroduce it to people, not really more, I'm kind of not in that sphere anymore now. But when I was, people were like, yeah, you know, I've been thinking about that, but no one's really like talked to me about it. And I think also in our parents' generation, and again, my grandmother was really, really big on it. Her insurance agent used to like come to the house, like in person, and go with policies and all that. Yeah, no, and she like just had a million policies for everybody. She had a policy for me when I was a kid and all that. Like, so she really was very, very adamant about it. So I kind of had a radar for it, but I think with the advent of work-based insurance, work-sponsored insurance, I should say. I think people just kind of just depended on that and would say, okay, well, I have a policy through my job, 100,000, 250, or whatever it is. and didn't really feel the urgency, the sense of urgency to try to get additional policies and understand what that would mean, because people just assumed, my job will cover that.
Right.
I think the conversation shifted more so to medical costs and like, oh, do I have health care through my job? I can take for granted my life insurance through my job, but not my health care. And it just fell off the map, like in terms of just the national conversation. You didn't hear about it. You would see it in commercials and things like that, and then later, like recently, people would say, okay, well, if someone's trying to sell me insurance, they're trying to sell me like a product, as if it was like I don't know, it's like some kind of consumer good instead of a real financial protection.
Right.
And so I think that just narrative wise, it went wild. Now the thing is, what you started to see, and again, social media, people pass away and GoFundMe for their funeral. And again, that's no judgment, but the point is, if you have a policy, that shouldn't happen.
Right.
And I think people now understand the urgency of the situation.
Right.
Also, again, all these things are linked. When you talk about minorities, Black people specifically, especially in America, you talk about health and mental health and all that, and our life expectancy and everything else. I think a lot of people, just life insurance was not a priority on our list. We're thinking like we need basic needs, and then after that, we need, if we do get beyond that, we need to get house and car and this and that. Yeah. And I'm saying we in a very general sense. I think more and more people did gravitate towards that, but if they had a nice job and they had life insurance, they felt like their base was covered, and let's move on. But not really diving in after that to say, okay, you know what? I need to do foundational planning for the future so I could get a variable life policy, so I could be aggressive instead of just defensive. And that's the other thing. I think people view life insurance as, oh man, I'm just planning for when I'm gonna die. Like, I'm planning for, I'm trying to get everything set up beyond that for my kids and just leave them money. But it's like, no, you can be aggressive in your defense planning. You can have a variable or universal policy where you can invest and you can have a cash, option on that. But people just didn't have that conversation. And it was a remove from our parents and our grandparents because they didn't really plan like that. They planned foundationally, but they didn't really plan for these other vehicles. So there was just this divide between the options that we had now and the way that they were planning. Right. And, I love our people, but we don't talk a lot about things, especially in our families.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's interesting you mentioned that because, I didn't even realize that, retirement planning is a new concept.
Right.
That people haven't been doing that for hundreds of years. That's what, the 70s or something? Yeah,
and a lot of stuff is new stuff.
Yeah.
That's what, and I don't want to just, we are talking about Black people because we're Black and that's our interest.
Right.
But, this could be applied to everyone in America. Yeah. There are scores of white people who don't know anything about what we're talking about either. And they can have their own podcast. And but what I mean by that is the point being that you talk a lot about shame, financial shame and stuff too. And I do think we're too hard on each other. And even I want to make sure that I'm not coming across like, oh, Black people do this and do that. Yeah. No, we are just talking about ourselves in this space, but it's applicable to everyone.
Right.
It's applicable to everyone. Yeah. And I don't want us to, be too hard on ourselves. I just want us to be intentional.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. And I think, I think in a sense we have to call things out, but call it out with love.
Right.
Call it out with care. So,
right.
Like we're doing it to uplift, not to shame, not to judge, not to put anyone down.
I think mental health is just. I mean, I think it's the linchpin.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have in this podcast. You'll probably be tired of hearing me saying it, but I can't say it enough. You've caught sort of the lightning in the bottle in the sense that it's all about mental health. It really is at the end of the day. And everything you can say about, again, we're talking about our people, everything you can say about our people and stigmas and everything else from mental health then applies to financial well-being and everything else. So I think that when you talk about, for example, even generationally, like our parents did a lot for us, but there were not a lot of conversations about mental health, about how to deal with it. I'm a man, we talk about toxic masculinity. That translates directly into finances. Like, there's no question. And obviously I wouldn't expect you to have done a lot about that, but the point is you could do a lot about that. And I just think that when you're talking about finances and management and how we view what we want to do financially, it's all through the prism of, okay, well, how are you feeling about like your life? How are you feeling about your goals? How are you feeling about where you want to be?
Right.
How are you feeling about where other people are around you, the people you're surrounding yourself with, the people that you talk to and get guidance from? How's your relationship with your family? That plays into your mental health and your financial health.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And like, without realizing it, like money is so emotional. So like, yeah, that it's, if you're having a bad day, like, I don't know, I can think about myself of like, oh, I'm feeling down maybe, or even if I'm feeling good, I'm going to go treat myself to something. Or, like I'm not feeling great, I'm going to avoid looking at the stack of bills that's sitting over there. Like, there's so many ways that are how we think about the world, how we view the world and ourselves, that then show up in not just our financial actions, but in every action.
Absolutely.
And so I find that, like, of course, like, history and context plays a role, but it really is on us to do that work, to have those conversations, to
own it.
Yeah, exactly, to own it and to be able to break those generational curses, because we don't have to live with them. We don't have to continue to pass it on to the next and to the next. So,
we know better.
Yeah.
We do know that better now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's so true. We can only, I don't want to say victim, because yes, we are, but I think you can adopt a different mindset.
You can acknowledge what's happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like embracing victimhood.
Right, exactly, because, unfortunately, the way that
you're making a great
things are, things are set up, reparations are very few and in between. They're not going to be happening anytime soon. So it's for us. Yeah, exactly. So it's for us to build ourselves up. That's so true. So still kind of trending on the line of mental health. I want to talk about this idea of the fear of abundance. So a big journey that I've been on has been with personal development, because I feel like the first step to really getting the life that you want is being able to feel like you deserve it, believing that you deserve it. And so I feel like, of course, there's context that has kept us in places and spaces that are not affluent, that are not necessarily telling us we can reach our max potential, that we can go for the highest of heights. But how can we maybe remove this fear of abundance, and maybe begin to cultivate more of a space of abundance in terms of not only our finances, but in everything that we can.
Great question. I'm gonna actually steal something that a mutual leader of ours and I'm sure you probably got the speech from him too. He told the story of how he was coming up and this and that. And long story short, I won't make it too specific, so that we won't make it too specific. But he told the story about when he was first starting out, and he was married. He was already married, and he envisioned like his house and his car and all that stuff, or not car, but his house and everything else where he wanted to live. And told his wife, and she would like sort of reiterate it back to him. And he lived his life in pursuit of what was already a concrete thing. And I forget his terminology, but he was basically saying like he was living in an abundance. Yeah. He wasn't spending money he didn't have or anything like that, but he was living as if he knew it was a foregone conclusion that he would achieve this. Mm-hmm. And he was living as if he was that person that had already achieved it. Now, I say all that to say, to answer your question, I had to, as myself, so I answer for myself and not all our people and everything else. I had to start getting out of the mode of dreaming and hoping and things of that nature to actually living, documenting, even if it wasn't written, but just having benchmarks and accountability of, realistic goals to achieve. Yeah. And having a sense of accomplishment. Mm-hmm. Then it became a fun activity to loop different things together so that it wouldn't seem like a task. And it goes back to what I was saying before, and I'm using this metaphor, but it's like, okay, if I want to, exercise, but I also want to read a book or Audible, why can't I like Audible while I'm exercising so that I can do both? And Audible is fun for me, so blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. And when I'm saying all that to say is use that as incremental goals to get, and that's how you live in abundance. Like when you tell yourself like, hey, I can't wait to wake up tomorrow at 6, and I know I'll start work at 8, but I need an hour and a half to get through like as much of this book as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. It's not even like, oh, I gotta run, 2 miles and I gotta get through 2 chapters. It's like, no. If I wanna like do the thing I enjoy, mm-hmm. I need this much time to do it. Right. And by the time I get back at 8, this will have been done. Mm-hmm. And sort of, again, everything's in your head. Everything's a war. Everything's sort of a manipulation. And it's basically like, if I can incrementally live in abundance, enjoy myself while I, accomplish things, right, then it won't seem like a task for me to improve my life. Yeah. I think that a lot of, again, and it comes back to, I was talking about defensive planning and being aggressive and all that. Mm-hmm. I think especially with our people, you were talking about systemic racism, the system and systemic racism and everything. We are so used to things being negative against us, and they are. Mm-hmm. We have a lot going against us. Mm-hmm. But as long as we can get up, if you are healthy and you can get up and you can breathe, get up every day, like take the blessings that you do have and then run with them. Run with them. That's how you live in abundance. Keep things in perspective. Think about people who you know are sick. Think about if you're sick, and when you're sick and you're bedridden, or if you're in the hospital, the one thing you don't care about anything else. You don't care about bills. You don't care about anything. Man, if I could just get up out of this bed, if I could just get healthy again, then I would do this, 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 and this. Think about it like that, and you have an abundance of opportunity and time every single day. And then you can incorporate like the things that you want to do. And trust me, I'm talking like, oh, I knew this. Trust me, this was a journey to try to get it. And I'm not where I want to be, but I'm starting to get there. Yeah. No. A couple of things came to mind. So I feel like you definitely have to build like the evidence, essentially, of that abundance. Like
like the living in it every day, the habit stacking of like doing the thing that you
Habit stacking.
Yep.
That was a short way of everything I just said.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it's important to like explain it, but like, yeah, no, where did I get that from? I think Atomic Habits, one of those books. But like, the habit stacking of being able to do something that you know is going to help you get to where you want to be, but like also doing something that you already know you enjoy, so that you can rewire yourself in a sense to be able to enjoy that as well. So I feel like, yeah, there is a lot of evidence against us that like shows that, yeah, we should be looking at life in a negative way, and we should be showing up a certain way, and we should feel hopeless, but we can build evidence for ourselves that that's the complete opposite of that. So yeah, I think that's right on. One of the like personal development people that I like first started off with was Bob Proctor. I feel like he's like, he's like the one. I feel like everybody, when you start off with personal development, he's like one of the first people you hear about. But he has like, the idea of like there's sort of two levels to the mind. There's the conscious and the subconscious. And the subconscious is really where the action happens, where we can implant the beliefs. So doing the things every day that help us implant those beliefs, help us change what we've seen or what we're accustomed to, so that we can make a change. I think that's, that was great. Okay. Trying to think what touched on like pretty much everything. Awesome. Intertwined in everything.
And it's all intertwined, right?
Yeah. No, it truly is. It truly is. Like it all like you were saying, like you fix the mental, everything. I mean, not just finances, but like
it's easier said than done. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
I mean, if everybody can fix the mental, what kind of world we live in?
Right. It's better one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true.
But it's just it's so important to harp on that. And I know you're about to get something. I'll just say this quickly. Obviously there are concrete things and concrete vehicles that we can do, and there are concrete methods that can be applicable to everyone. But everyone's mental sort of motherboard is so different that I'm just of the belief that if you try to say, okay, well, here's something that all you guys can do, like, do this method of saving, or do this method of exercising, or do this method, it will help short term for a little while, but because everyone's wired so differently, you have to get people to a space where they bring peace to themselves and then do something in their rhythm and their comfortability.
Yeah.
And then, you'll get the results that you wanted. So that's why it all starts there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's definitely an individual experience, but then it's also like, you have to.
So personal.
Yeah, definitely. And you have to like shine.
Everything else.
No, that's very true. And you have to be able to like shine from the inside out. Like you can't go the other way around. Like you can't let the outside affect the inside. That's so true. So I want to touch on the hustle culture, like but like I was trying to figure out like how we play it.
I mean, that's just
we can just talk about it. I'll figure it out.
Because it does kind of exist outside of everything else we kind of talked about. So let's dive into hustle culture a little bit, and I feel like this can be kind of like. So can I ask you what was your thought in introducing that?
So when I was thinking hustle culture, I was thinking of like having like holding down like multiple jobs, either out of like necessity or scarcity, sort of just like that need to sort of just like be constantly busy, constantly bringing stuff in to be, I don't know, feel that need of scarcity. But I know when we chatted a little bit before the recording, I know you mentioned hustle culture in a different way.
Yeah, it has a lot of different meanings.
Yeah. And so I feel like that could be interesting to touch on as well, because I think about, again, I don't want to like specify, but or not specify, but generalize, but our affinity at times for certain jobs, certain careers that maybe aren't the best, and they're, whether it be out the streets or honestly online, because I feel like we see a lot of different things online between people, like credit repair, and things like that. So I'm just curious, like, let's just, I guess, just have a conversation around hustle culture. So.
Yeah, no. I thank you for laying that out, because I think that's it right there. It's interesting that we started this conversation by talking about people's distrust for financial institutions. So really what that implies is that, like, people don't want to do something risky. But it's interesting. It's just like everything else. It's all about the same person will say, well, I'm not going to put my money in that bank. But what I am going to do is, like, this very risky activity over here, because there's a rush from feeling like you're kind of thinking outside the box and making money and what have you. So so the point being, it all comes down to perception. There's no more risk in a financial, as a matter of fact, a lot less risk in a financial institution, even though they do ridiculous things sometimes, than putting your money on the street, or doing some sort of, and again, there's no judgment. Making money is making money, especially legally. Making money is making money, and I respect it.
That's facts.
But there are very risky ways, even legally, making money. Like, we in the insurance industry, we bump up against, there's legitimate insurance, and then there's kind of like, okay, there's mid-level marketing, there's all kinds of things where you can look on the other side of the looking glass, and it's like, man, okay, that, you sure about that? Like, but yet you'll be the same person to tell me that you're not going to put your money in a bank. But, like, this is risky. And so I say all that to say, when you say hustle culture, that's exactly what it is. Because some people, and a lot of our people, will say, hey, you know what? I feel like I have more control of my future, my finances, or whatever, if I am running a hustle of some sort. If I am, I don't know, it's hard to, and plus I don't want to cast any aspersions, especially in the legitimate industry, but the point being, they'll say, well, I'd rather do this than that. And it's like, well, that's risky. That's a lot more risky than option B.
Right.
So again, I think it's all about conversations about what's cool, what's boring. People believe something is bad if they've been told. And I think, again, people just want to appear abundant, but do things out of fear, do things out of wanting to, look a certain way. Perception. Do things out of perception. And it's like, this is not like a foundation. This is not solid.
Yeah.
And I think, part of my growing up, and again, it's all mental, but part of my growing up was like, okay, at the end of the day, you have to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, are you doing things that are going to, like, legitimately improve your life and the life of the people you care about, your family and your close friends and everything else? Or are you doing things just to look good and look, and I would take that same metaphor to personal, like, health and all that. Again, that's why. Are you exercising because you want to look good to go to the beach? Or are you exercising because you legitimately want to live longer and be healthier? Another conversation for our people, right? Mortality rates and food, this and that. So that's why I think it comes from, when we talk about hustle culture, it's about perception. You talk about social media. Social media, in my opinion, I love it. I'm on Facebook all the time. I post things. I mostly post things like, politically and sports and all that. But when you see people post about relationships, when you see people post about money, it's like that does harm to us more so than anything else, because everyone sees something, people see something and want to, mimic it or surpass it or match it or compete with it. And that's what I think hustle culture comes out from. People like to be able to say, hey, you know what, I make money like on I think outside the box and make money like a different way than everyone else. People like saying that.
No, that's true.
People like saying that.
Yeah, like think about everybody with crypto, like, oh yeah, like I got in when it was early. And
it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's like money is money. Like, I don't care how you make it. Like, make it.
Yeah.
Make it, save it, protect yourself, protect your family, and then live in abundance and do what you want, have fun. Yeah, I feel like I've been saying, like, oh, you go on trips. No, go on trips and stuff like that is not bad.
Yeah, no,
like,
please, live life. Yes.
Live your life. Live your life. Please, please, please. Buy your cars, live your life, buy your house, do all that. But do it from a real space. Don't do it from a space of, perception. I think hustle culture, a lot of what you touched on is fluff and perception, and that harms our people.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I feel like also it's always going to tie back, because I mean, even perception ties back to mental health, but like I feel like the idea of like just the lack of knowledge that we may have around certain things, like we're familiar with what we grow up around, and so come on, goodness gracious.
Your break.
I know, right?
No, it's
working, but it's like it's so slow.
No, I think it's fast. I think it's so many ideas running through there. Like,
okay, yes, no, there it is. It's the lack of information, and I feel like it goes to that idea of like not wanting to be vulnerable, not wanting to ask the question of like, what is this? Like, I'll even speak from my personal experience, like in jobs, in school, I always like to have the answers. I didn't want to have to ask like, hey, what's this? Or like what is that? I want to show up as perfect. I already felt like the cards were stacked against me, so let me not show any weakness in any way. And so asking somebody like, hey, like I don't know what permanent life insurance is. Like, could you just explain that and how it could be beneficial to me? Then I can make the decision whether or not, I need to act on it or what have you. So definitely that feeling of, oh, I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about. And I feel like that can also...
That's a big thing.
Yeah. Like, I feel like that can also lead into the fact that maybe that's why... Yeah, same. Definitely same. And I feel like that can lead into why we may avoid like seeking financial planning advice, because we don't want to show up to the table and feel like... Because, I mean,
I feel like a smart person, but I don't want to appear like I'm not smart.
Exactly. And it depending on who you talk to, maybe this person takes a lot of time to like over-educate what it is we're talking about versus like, oh, here's the plan and like you should do these things. And you're like, why should I do them? And what exactly are they? I still don't really understand, but I don't want to say I don't know. And so like, I know, that's definitely something I struggle with. And I feel like that can definitely, I know it was passed down from my family. Sorry, family, love you guys. But it can definitely be, something that we all struggle with.
Absolutely.
So I feel like we touched on a lot of like really awesome topics.
Yeah.
This is not something I normally do, but like want to open the floor to see if there's anything that like you want to talk about it a little bit more.
No. Listen, I'm just really glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This you can't ever know how something's gonna go, but I knew it was gonna go well. But this went even better than I thought. It was just such a joy to be here. I really, really love what you do. So if there's something I want to say one more time, I really, really love what you do. I really love what you have been doing up to this point. I'm glad to even be like a small part of it. And if anything else, you know where to find me. I will happily come back. If you do a bigger thing, if you do an event, if you do anything like that, have multiple people come on, just please don't forget me. I'd love to come back.
I definitely won't. And actually, speaking of where to find you for the listeners, tell us a little bit more about Stop Playing and what it's about more so, and then where we can find you, where we can listen.
Sure. So my Instagram is hashtag Caldwell Rashaka. So it's my last name, my first name. But Stop Playing Podcast, we are off at the moment, but we've done 100. I believe it's 127. I'm not a producer. I'm just the talent. No, I'm joking. But my podcast partner and the producer and pretty much the engine behind the operations, Sham, so Shaka and Sham. We started about 5 years ago. We do current events. You can find us literally on Linktree, so pretty much any platform. We started, again, about 5 years ago, so in the middle of the Trump administration, so I would do a lot of political stuff.
A lot of stuff to talk about.
We had a lot of stuff to talk about. So mostly current events, news, entertainment, sports. We kind of did it that way, and we're kind of figuring things out. We may pick right back up, or may do some other ventures, meet some interesting people, and do some podcasts with them. So who knows what the future holds, but there's a lot of content out there if you guys want to listen to.
Awesome. I'll make sure to put the links in the show notes afterwards. And then also just the last thing I want to ask is, what's one thing that you would want the listeners to know, even if it just impact one person, help change their lives? What's something one piece of advice that you would give, not necessarily just on a financial journey, but any journey?
Great question.
Could certainly just, I don't know, give an aha. Yeah.
Well, sticking with the theme I've been talking about, and a thing that, even if not in these exact words, I've heard you really emphasize on the show. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. You can't expect to improve, whether it be mentally, financially, physically, anything, unless the biggest war you can possibly have, you have all these outside influences. You have, for we were talking about black people, you're a black woman. You have society, you have just oppression, racism, all the isms. But the biggest war you have is in between the temples.
Mm-hmm.
Be kind to yourself. You cannot do anything. You cannot, get up in the morning and attack the day and actually hope to achieve anything without setting realistic expectations for yourself. Give yourself a sense of accomplishment. Like, make small goals. Stacking.
Habit stacking.
Habit stacking. Yeah, it is. Habit stack. Like, do the things that bring you joy, and do not let people take your peace. Once you get to the point where you're like, I'm not gonna let the person steal my joy today. I'm not gonna let these events steal my joy today. Or I'm gonna steal my peace today. You will go leaps and bounds beyond where you think.
No, I think that is so true, and that is the most perfect note to wrap us up on, because that should be, if you got anything from today's conversation, take that away.
Awesome.
For sure. But thank you so much, Shaka, for joining us. It has been truly a pleasure.
Thank you.
Awesome.